So is that your early Christmas gift?
Years old, you know, it's kind of about that time to.
There's like 3 cars all
Scoot over just a tad and then we can connect this one.
Oh, we're gonna have 2 up here? We usually just share them.
I think so. Unless they're just hanging out in the parking lot.
Sorry about
Sure, we can hear.
that. Usually they're all up there.
Do you guys have like an agenda? Is that right here?
Yes.
Right here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be interesting if there wasn't a
Last minute deal.
Is everybody here today, tonight?
Mr. Mexico.
I had to call
Long story.
I'm hoping.
No, he does a lot of travel to Mexico City for his job, unfortunately.
Gotcha.
It's, thank you, Jim.
Oh, Tricia's gone today, isn't she?
I've done that before, it's no fun, not Mexico City, but everywhere travel.
Yes.
Who's the other one missing? Is Jill gonna be here?
I want to say it was Jim.
Oh, Heidel. How does he pronounce his name? Heidel?
All right, well, we're past 6:30, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Go ahead and do introductions. Ken Lish, Vice Chair.
Sean Samuelson.
Joel White.
Fiona Boger.
Sandy Pennington, Liaison.
Allison James, Town Liaison.
Matt Magley, Town Manager.
Perfect. Now that we've been called to order, we have people from the public today. Any public comment out there? You guys like to say anything? Go to the order? Okay.
Can we ask why you're here on a nice Wednesday evening? Okay, good.
Perfect. Government in action. We will have another person who wants to make public comment later on. She couldn't make it right now. what is mostly interested in our very last discussion topic anyway. So we'll open public comment back up when we get Coal Creek Crossing Trail on the agenda. In that case, we'll jump to updates and look ahead. Matt, is that you?
That is, well,
Open
the
space
first
tax
one
for you?
sure, and I can probably answer some questions on the second one too, if you have
Perfect.
questions. On the open space tax, I wanted to just provide you an update on something that probably will come forward in January to the board with regard to a resolution that was passed in 2004 by a previous town board with regard to the ballot language that was approved in 2001. So some background, the residents approved a ballot measure in 2001, which increased the sales tax rate for open space purchases, enhancements to open space and buffer areas between commercial and residential developments, and trail construction, other things like that. Also with that 2001 ballot was a measure to increase or issue debt for the purchase of open space. We issued about just over $6 million to purchase open space. We've spent most of that on open space purchases over the years. We have about $1 million left of that money, which we'll spend at some point in the future for open space purchases. In 2004, the town board, and I think based on some of the discussions that the committees at that time had, thought it was important to try to clarify on what the open space money could be spent on, and within that resolution, the board approved some priorities set for high, medium, and low priorities, and the current board's had some discussion about this, and I think it's felt that a resolution isn't really needed. It actually causes some confusion, and are leaning towards repealing this resolution in the January meeting or February, depending on when it comes forward, and just rely based solely on what the voters approved in the 2001 election, rather than try to further clarify what the voters' intent was. They feel it's not their position or responsibility to try to clarify what the voters' intent was when they approved that ballot language. So I wanted to let you know that that's coming up and answer any questions you might have with regard to the resolution or the ballot language or anything.
Do we have copies of the initial ballot and the resolution?
So just to make sure I'm hearing what you're saying right, that language that we've seen of the high, medium, and low priorities is pretty much if what happens in January is we're expecting does happen, that will more or less just disappear, and we shouldn't use that going forward as our...
Right, yeah.
Okay.
And instead what you'll have is as projects come forward or opportunities to buy open space come forward, the committee will discuss
recommend
those.
or not commend.
Right.
Not recommend.
To the board, and then the
Straight
board
in
will,
the top middle.
the board will take your recommendation
Percentage.
Yeah, that percentage, you can increase
on
it.
those
Perfect.
items, and then make a final decision on whether to spend the funds for those purposes.
Okay.
And I'll also point out that, it's not uncommon for a new board to repeal something in a previous board if they feel it was not necessary or disagreed, and so I think that's what you have happening here.
Can you read that, Allison?
Shall town of Superior taxes be increased $400,000 in the first full fiscal year by increasing the sales tax and use tax 0.3% commencing on January 1st, 2002, with the revenues from such increase to be deposited in a special fund to be used for the acquisition, construction, operation, and maintenance, and any expenses related thereto for, sorry,
I
that's
think
the
it
wrong
must be
one.
2A.
Sorry. I
Must-
saw the 3%.
It must be 2A.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
in the middle column.
Middle,
Oh. Shall Town of Superior taxes be increased $400,000 in the first full fiscal year by increasing the sales and use tax 0.3% commencing on January 1st, 2002, with the revenues from such increase to be deposited in a special fund to be used for paying incentives for creating and maintaining additional open space within commercial developments, and to create, enhance, or expand buffers between commercial and residential areas or main thoroughfares and residential areas, and to create, enhance, or expand wildlife corridors or any other open space acquisitions, and any expenses related thereto for open space to serve the residents of the town of Superior, any of which incentives or acquisitions may be financed by multiple fiscal year financial obligations, and shall such revenues be collected and spent by the town without regard to any spending, revenue raising, or other limitation, including Article X, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution.
From a town trustee perspective, a resolution passed by one board, the 2004 board, is not binding on subsequent boards. And so the resolution, and she can read that resolution, or you're probably all familiar with the priority resolution. That never was binding on any subsequent board other than the board that approved it. Nonetheless, it gets very confusing because it comes up in so many discussions, and it really has no relevance to those discussions unless, of course, the current board chooses to abide by it. And this current board says we think it's confusing and unnecessary, and wishes to have the ballot language that was approved by the voters stand on its own. So you are the committee to render an opinion on that potential action.
I'm personally in favor of that action. I think there was somewhat of a disagreement about where our priorities stood anyway from where that resolution dictated they should be. So I think we, as a committee, are probably in favor of it as a whole.
Agreed.
In favor of repealing
the
it.
repeal,
Yeah.
even though I guess
it's just
not,
to get it off the books.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks, Matt.
And while I'm here, I'm not sure what you were going to cover on the town center, Allison, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the town center, or were you just going to provide an update, or?
I didn't really have any update
okay.
except that to watch for the packet to come out on Friday.
So, yeah, I have just a couple things for you on the town center that you'll be interested in. One is this PD amendment that has been submitted to the town and is being under review is going to be continued to the January 11th meeting, simply because staff's still working through some items within the application, so it needs to be continued. So that'll be my recommendation to the board at Monday's meeting, is that they just continue the public hearing to January 11th so we can work out those final items. Staff is going to be starting to work on the final development plans for park parcels 1 and 2, which are along the creek corridor. And so when we have those plans in a form that's available for your committee's review, we'll make sure and get those to you, because it'll have to be coordinated with the Coal Creek corridor.
Yep.
And something else that I've asked the Parks Director to do also is to engage a firm that can help us create an improvement plan for the Coal Creek corridor that I think would be great for your committee to head up specifically for that. The firm that I'm thinking about is the landscape firm that helped us with the flood mitigation improvements on Coal Creek, on west of McCaslin. If you go to 3rd Avenue, and look at what they did there, I think it looks great. And I think it would be something that would look favorable in the town center project as well. So
Is this something you picture happening in conjunction with the parcels 1 and 2 being developed?
we're going
or-
to try to coordinate that so they work together, and that you guys have an opportunity to guide that Coal Creek corridor and kind of shape how that's going to look along the creek in the town center. So
The mitigation work you're referring to, is it the work that goes like underneath the existing trail, the Mayhopper Trail, or is it?
no, so if you, in original town, if you go, the Second Avenue Bridge that was out for a little while, if you go west from there up to where the Third Avenue Bridge used to be, in that area, they did some landscape plan for that
Okay.
mitigation project, and I think it looks, personally, I think it looks great.
Do you wish to see that area on a map so you can
I was just
visualize it?
curious.
Okay.
I had noticed that there was mitigation work going on the Mayhopper Trail,
Yeah.
going along the creek, and I wasn't sure if that's what you're referring to or not.
No, this is a little bit further
Further north.
downstream from there, but they are doing more upstream improvements as you go west along the creek as well, which might have some landscape improvements to that as well. So, because when you go over here to this, you guys have walked over there and just seeing all the overgrowth, and it just needs to be cleaned up and a plan put in place for it, I think, to make a nice amenity for that whole area. So,
Our biggest concern was that the right overgrowth was sticking around for the habitat for the Preble mouse.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everything else, so.
and those trees have been identified that need to stay for that habitat, and so that'll need to be incorporated as part of the plan as well.
Is that something recent, or is that still harking back to the report that was submitted a couple of years ago now? Or it was an environmental study, I believe, and it kind of showed a boundary of generally where the habitat was. Like, do we have a specific boundary now? Do we know exactly?
Yes.
Okay.
That's been, because they've been working, the master developer's been working on a CLOMR, which is the flood improvements that they have to get through urban drainage. Conditional letter of map revision. Sorry, I had to think of what that stood for. And so they have additional detail as far as habitat and what needs to stay and what needs to go. So we can get that to you guys as well as we start this process.
I think that would be appreciated. I think there was a concern that we had a while ago that kind of got put on the back burner because of the actual construction taking place. But based off what we had seen in that environmental study, there was still somewhat of an overlap of where the potential ball field would be
Mhm.
and where the endangered habitat was. And we were trying to get more clarification on that and actually do a walk through over there so
Yeah,
we could
yeah,
see
yeah.
better.
And those boundaries have been set
Okay.
on either side of the creek to where they're not allowed to go into.
Okay. Yeah,
So-
we would definitely appreciate seeing that literature then.
Yeah. And then we have a discussion on Monday with regard to the buffer issue to the south. And those concept plans that we hired an engineer and landscape firm to do will be available on the website tomorrow when the board gets their packet. So you can see there's 3 options that are being proposed, and the board will have discussion on Monday about those, that you guys feel free to let the board know how you feel about either.
That's at the work session?
That starts at 6. at the
I
work session.
strongly recommend you have representative or representatives at that work session so that you can see them as they're presented and discussed.
So those, as far as kind of an open space kind of connection with your committee, those are some updates on the town center. Other updates for the town center is utilities, which are your water, sewer, storm, gas, electric. Those probably be completed end of December, first part of January. And then they can start doing work for Main Street construction and Superior Drive, which were in the first final development plan. Boulder Valley Ice Building, that is the large building over there, is going to be probably done in March. They might have one sheet of ice open at the end, or at the beginning of February, but we're still checking on that. And then potentially you'll see final development plans next year for residential for over there in the town center, the medical office building, and possible hotel.
They're doing some work up by the sidewalk up the hill. I don't know, are they tunneling underneath the road to the other
So,
side?
yeah, those are connections to the water main that's in McCaslin and the reuse line.
Okay.
Those connections have been made, and so now they're testing the lines, and they'll backfill those holes and get them sealed up, so. Yeah.
Are you trying to get out of here? Should we address a couple more issues while you're here that involve you?
Sure.
Because we brought up in the retreat, as was requested, the new mission statement. And then also, it's probably going to come up in the work plan, the potential interest in putting more OSAC open space money towards trail development in 2016.
Yep.
Did you want to talk about either one of those?
I think the board discussed the starting from the last item, the trail suggestion, which I think is great from the committee. They discussed, there's, I think, was general support for that. And my suggestion would be to work with my staff, the Parks Department, on, and I don't know if ProStack would be involved in this, but identifying which trails we want to include in this year's, that we bid out, and we can bid those out, bring it to the board, and then just note to the board that this is something the committee supported and requested, and that we have the funds available in the open space fund for the trails. And it would require a budget amendment at the end of the year, but that's something pretty standard that we can do. So that's for that one. For the, what was the other item?
Mission statement, how do you see that being incorporated? You know, it can be just a working mission statement. It can actually replace the language in the authorizing resolution. And there's a open question as to whether or not that wording can be put on the website, et cetera. So just your thoughts on how what the potential is there and how it should be handled.
I think I would not include it in the authorizing resolution for the committee, simply for the fact that it's easier to change from year to year. Committees change, and they may want to tweak a word here or a word there. And simply, if you have a working mission statement that the committee agrees to, I don't see any issue with putting it on your webpage. And then it's easier to modify in future years when you have new members or new mission. You know, you might have a different mission in future years than what you come up with this year. So that would be
That
my
has to go
suggestion.
through the board, right, to make sure the board agrees with the mission statement?
Well, I think the board's already seen it, but
Typically, I mean.
the board can always, yeah. We would always.
So I believe the board's seen our current version, and that was more or less okayed by the board. So at this point,
I don't think it was okayed.
well, it was accepted through the minutes, and
Yeah, the minutes are accepted, but it,
well, didn't
this, to me, I would be happier to know that the mission statement as written has been reviewed and expressly approved by the town board rather than the incorporation in minutes. Because to me, incorporation in minutes is simply my acknowledgement that I've read them and I understand them as presented. It doesn't necessarily mean that I agree with them. So I think maybe try to have an early annual dinner with the board, and at that point,
mm-hmm.
feel that, just finish that subject of the mission statement. Expressly asked in your board, in your agenda for that evening, for approval
Yep.
of the mission statement and the ability to put it on your website. And if it can't, we can do the head nods at the dinner, we might have to articulate that at the next board meeting as an official action.
Okay.
So any
Perfect.
other things for Matt?
Yeah.
That
Doesn't have
maybe
to be about
might,
open space, I guess, either.
are there any issues in the work plan that you'd benefit from hearing Matt's perspective on?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I think those are kind of the big issues that we had outstanding.
Okay.
Did you want to get his opinion on Coal Creek Crossing Trail?
I'm not sure exactly where we stand on that because we haven't really talked about it yet.
Seen the actual map of where it was going. I found something online, but I didn't know.
Yeah, and I think, ProStack will have to review and comment on as well, and then you will provide your review and comments, and then the town board will need to decide, how they want to approach that. But I've talked to the developer. They're fine with whatever the town decides there. It's in our open space. They don't feel like it has any impact on their development, or there's no commitment that they feel like the residents who are moving into that subdivision would feel like they are missing out because now they're not getting a trail, because we still would have a trail connection on the west end. So I think whatever the committees recommend and the board ultimately designs, I think will work. We can make work.
Okay.
So that would be my comment on that.
And then policy thing, Matt and I sort of casually talked about it, but I do think it's wise for both ProStack and OSAC in their trail discussions to have the full set of trails on its working documents, because this was going to be a privately funded trail, and for some reason that meant it didn't show up on the trail plans. But in terms of you guys understanding fully the connections and what's out there, anything that's privately funded should be on the master plan, so you know it's there. So anyway, just maybe a mental note
Yeah.
to make sure that.
So we'll have to work with, my staff will have to work with the committees and incorporate
Okay.
all those, because there's a number of trails in the town center project that are proposed, and Cal Monte's got one, and this, so we'd have to work with you on that.
Perfect.
Sorry to
No.
consume so much.
No, thanks. Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate it, actually.
It's good information.
Yeah, we always
Happy
appreciate hearing it.
holidays. Yeah.
Yeah,
me too.
ditto.
See you guys.
Hey,
All right, well, moving on to the wildlife brochure.
So I've been in touch with the representative from Boulder County who attended the Hodgson Harris opening that I coordinated with for that event. And she has to get approval, and so that's kind of pending. I'm just waiting on that, and then we could, perhaps, if she gives us the approval, we'll be able to just copy it and not have to worry about the expense that it would be by purchasing it from them.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I think the next thing is the work plan. Fortunately, we don't have quorum tonight, so I don't think we can make a recommendation. We can go through it and kind of do any further adjusting that we want to do based off what we started with last week or last month, and then hopefully we'll have it at a finalized form and we can just vote instead of having to do a full discussion next. Thank you, Sean. All right, so Allison, this is what this is taking what we talked about last month and put it into, nice, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so if everyone just wants to kind of read through it, at least in the first quarter, and then we'll talk about anything we want to add, drop, whatever.
Turn a light off. Help a little bit.
Does anybody else benefit from reading them? So we're all sort of,
Loud, you mean?
yeah, I actually like them read out loud, so
Oh.
we're all,
We can do that.
yeah.
I can read.
Okay.
Number 1, hold leadership election and commit to member attendance as related meetings, at related meetings and events. Harking back to last meeting, that last part, the related meetings and events, that was trying to get more participation at like the Louisville, Broomfield, Boulder County open space meetings, and even our own board meetings. That way we have better representation and a better overall knowledge base for what we're doing. Meet with ProStack to develop a collaboration plan related to common interests for the year. I imagine that the primary piece of that will be discussing, at least initially, how we're going to start working together to develop our 5-year trail recommendations, because that's what we'll be starting next year for the first time. Number 3, investigate and potentially develop a volunteer program for trail maintenance initiative. We talked about that last time, trying to more or less develop and build a more robust volunteer program, at least specifically for our trail maintenance. Number 4, plan and schedule National Trails Day event, including education and outreach program. That's always kind of been a standing first quarter agenda item to get that kicked off the ground, and we can start brainstorming ideas. Number 5, review open space funding parameters. I believe that pretty much relates to, Sandy, what you're talking about with the resolution that, well, I guess what you and Matt were talking about, the resolution to kind of take back those prior boards.
And I also think sort of formalizing, opening up more funding
Mhm.
for trails, links, et cetera.
Yep.
So,
Number 6, assess existing and potential trails and receive citizen input on current status and future opportunities in the Superior region and make recommendations to board.
Did we discuss how we're going to receive, like, are we receiving additional citizen input?
I don't know if we talked about that at our last meeting, but I know at prior meetings we had talked about keeping it kind of at a informal level through public engagement at events. I'm trying to remember which of those events might happen in the first quarter. Arbor Day, is that first or second quarter? Blanking on when that is.
April.
Yeah, so do we have any town events in the first quarter?
that's snow months.
Yeah.
There's no Valentine's Day run? What are you talking about?
I mean, I think it's one of the, I think we kind of wrapped a lot of ideas into that one. I mean, there's kind of that first part of the assessing existing and potential trails. I think what we could say is evaluate citizen input, because we've already received quite a bit from Chili Fest.
I actually think we should move that later on. I mean, if we're trying to get our top 7 trails approved, there's no point in trying to do further assessing of until we actually get concrete confirmation that they are in fact going to work on X, Y, and Z trails. And then from there, I think it'd be worth, again, reassessing. But I think that we need to focus on what we're actually going to accomplish in 2016 before we, I'm assuming this is in reference to the 5-year as opposed to 2016.
I think we might have tried to blend both those ideas into this because it ends with and make recommendations to the board. So I feel like if we're going to make recommendations to the board, it was probably on what we wanted for 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I am in agreement with you if we're going to try to start from scratch and get new info to try to develop a 5-year plan idea, we'd probably want to drop that down to the beginning of second quarter.
Devil's advocate here, I think probably in the first quarter, you will want to make that recommendation to the board of the top 7
Yes.
for
Yeah,
2016.
then we should, I think we should split that. That's a super long sentence. We're
Yeah.
trying to do too
Yeah,
much there.
I would remove the whole citizen
Yeah.
Yep.
input on current
That's
status and
later.
future opportunities. That bogs that down with a whole different idea.
So do we want to wordsmith that right now or go through the rest?
You could just say, assess existing and potential trails and make recommendations to the board,
Beautiful.
and take out that middle clause there.
I'll fix the phones.
I can fix it. You
Period,
can leave some.
and then just delete the rest of it all the way there.
Beautiful. Assess existing and potential trails and make recommendations to the board. Simple, sweet.
Do you want to add the clause, make recommendations to the board for those hope to be constructed in 2016?
We could just say for 2016 trail construction.
Or just say for 2016 for 2016 construction.
Yep. Assess existing and potential trails and make recommendations to the board for 2016 construction.
Beautiful.
Sounds good to me.
Love it.
All right. Number 7, board review of new committee mission and goals during joint meeting. Sounds like what we just said in the updates.
I would take the hyphens out there and goals and just make it during joint meeting.
That was my weird little notes.
Yeah.
that I was kind of
Okay.
popping in there.
Could you maybe say during joint dinner meeting so we know precisely which one that is? Okay.
And then, Allison, I think I asked this last time, but I'm blanking on your response. But to get that scheduled and to try to get it scheduled as early as possible, is that just town staff, you guys trying to get us on the agenda, or do we have to do anything? Or
It's kind of set up for us.
Do we know when it's planned for?
I don't know yet.
Usually we do planning commission first, but
either January or February. I think it was January.
Allison and I can lobby for sooner,
Yeah.
yeah, because I think it's important to get that going early.
Yeah, we did it in February last year, and
Yeah.
I think that worked out pretty well. And if we did it earlier, I know that would
Yeah.
be even better, but later than February, I think we'd be bummed out about.
Okay.
Number 8, develop marketing strategy to publicize web-based trail mapping for Superior and regional trails. This was a holdover that we had last time on this year's that we didn't really do a whole lot as far as a marketing strategy, and I think we kind of refined it to say this in our last meeting.
Well, if you recall too, just something that may not be on the radar, but for National Trails Day and everything, we did have the passport program with the new
Yep.
updated trails maps. It was a really great marketing piece that was done by our event and volunteer supervisor, and we kind of
Yep.
piggybacked on that marketing project. So that was one thing that I thought was really
That was a great
went well.
project, yeah.
So is there more work to be done in number 8, or is
My-
it finished?
My question is kind of that middle part to publicize the web-based trail mapping. I'm not sure we did much of that this past year because the passport program was more, here it is, a hard copy for you so you can get used to our trails. Trying to picture where we'd want to go with this.
We might start looking at the website and what's already on there.
And kind of cleaning up or figuring out whether it's adequate or something like that.
That's also, is somebody creating a potential agenda for number 2, meet with ProStack to develop a collaboration plan? So it would be interesting to chat with them about this web-based trail mapping and other marketing opportunities for trails at that meeting. And
That's a good idea.
should you get rid of that clause, web-based trail mapping from that sentence and just say, develop marketing strategy to publicize superior and regional trails? Because of course, web-based trail mapping can be part of that, but you're not
Yeah.
being overly specific.
I think that's a good idea.
Or to publicize, is it Superior's linked to regional trails, or are they two discrete things? Superior's trails and regional trails? It is two things?
Mhm.
You know, one of
Most
the
trails
big
do
things that's
link.
happened in the last 4 or 5 years is all the connections from, all the way from South Boulder, and now with the 36 bikeway, you can go almost all the way to Denver without ever being on the road.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one thing that Boulder County, actually no, it was the Open Space and Mountain Parks just did, is they just released a brand new interactive map that actually shows the trail closures, which is
Oh, really?
very, very useful.
This time of year especially.
Oh, yeah. And I was thrilled when I saw that.
So how would our residents be aware of that, Ken?
That's something that we'd have to work into our marketing
Okay.
strategy. So I think that's something we just tackle in the first quarter. I'm okay. So develop marketing strategy to publicize Superior's trails and links to regional trails. I think the wording of that is adequate.
Agreed.
All right, moving on to number 9. Determine public outreach program and annual education events.
Isn't that tied in with number 4? I mean, number 4 would be kind of a, I don't know. More specific. Yeah, it's more specific, and this is more general. That number 4 is kind of a subset of number 9. Kind of like number 8 is a subset of number 2.
So last time we met, we looked at the list of what we did last year and I think the year before.
Mm-hmm.
What else is to be done? I mean, more discussion about new events or?
Yeah, other events, yeah.
Well, I think there's a little bit of difference because one is focusing on National Trails Day, and then the other one is focusing on the our wildlife ecologist and her programs.
So we consider her to be the public outreach and the annual education? I mean, what do we consider public outreach
Well, the
program? Is
information,
that-
like, for example, we were doing those wildlife updates this past year.
Okay.
And like on the rattlesnake issue and a little bit of coyote issue and a little bit of bear information. And then, that was more slanted towards wildlife education, like the bug hunt and things like that. And then the other one was, we had the National Trails Day with the education with Hawk Quest and everything.
Mhm.
What if we just took out the education and outreach program at the end of 4, and then just that we ensure that the National Trails Day event is planned during that quarter? And then number 9 or 8, sorry, 8, no, 9 is just
9.
an overarching for anything else that we can get done during that time period.
So.
I think
first
that's a
of
good
all,
idea.
Why don't I take that and actually move it up to just above this, and then also take number, yeah. Since we are below 2. So that they're at least lumped together, so we understand.
Right.
the tide.
That makes sense. I like Fiona's idea. I think we can drop that last part from.
Just make a plan and schedule National Trails Day event, period.
Yeah.
On line 9. which is 4. there.
Perfect.
And then if I could suggest some copy editing on the, where's that, where did it go now?
Which one?
Okay, line 8 on the spreadsheet, but numeral 9. Shouldn't that, did I tell you I'm a writer and a copy editor? So I'm precise about my words. I think it should be determine annual public outreach and education programs.
Do we want annual or quarterly?
Oh, I think you're going to determine the whole year's schedule, aren't you, in the first quarter?
Actually, we were going to hopefully do it tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the other
So
question I was
what-
going to have. I
so
know we
what-
have it on our
So what
agenda
did
for
this one
evening.
mean then, if you're going to do it tonight? Why is it on the first quarter?
Well, we don't even have
Yeah, is that something we would need to vote on?
Usually it's towards the end of the year. It got moved up,
Right.
I think, at our last meeting.
So Sean, when you get to the next one,
Yeah.
I would say determine annual public outreach and education events. Take that word program out.
Batteries are dying.
Or determine annual public outreach and education programs. So events or programs there, whatever your preference is. There.
Oh. And that might be an easy one that we already have knocked off,
Right.
since we'll hopefully get that done this evening. Okay. Board rev- so I think we're at that last number now. Number 10, schedule annual. Nope, we did that already.
Number 7.
Did we miss one here?
This is where.
There we are. Okay. Yeah. Well, no.
No, where did
We
we
hit
have
that. I think we've hit everything now.
We didn't do
Sched-
number 10, but it kind of falls into the
I think it might
So
finally
why
got
wouldn't
that.
you move 10 way up? If that's sort of a catalyst for your year, should you not have it way at the top?
Yeah.
Schedule annual joint meeting with town board, period. Forget the preferably, because it's in the first quarter. Because you want the board to see that first, don't you, when they go through your work plan?
Yeah.
So we have, really? They both work?
Turn that one off.
Worst comes to worst, we steal the batteries from this guy and put in. Nice.
You want to move 10 up to?
Number 1 and number 2.
Yeah. 2 maybe,
Yeah. I mean, number 1, that always has to happen kind of
Right.
in our first.
yeah.
Okay, I just renumbered everything. I need another column where it just automatically numbers. It's crazy.
I think Ken wanted it second.
I'd say we should probably do it number 2.
Okay.
And if we're going to go ahead and put that there in the spirit of grouping like we were, maybe number 9 should go up to right below it.
Right. And then renumber.
Insert.
Yeah, there you go. I would just do
He
that.
does it a lot faster than I do it.
Beautiful.
Okay. Now we don't have to worry about it. All right, you want to continue on a second?
Yeah. Anyone have any final comments about first quarter before we move on? Perfect. All right, second quarter. First item, develop budget recommendations for the maintenance of open space and trails, annual update of the 5-year trails plan, and educational opportunities for committee and staff.
What is that? Why are you developing budget recommendations? What is that?
Maintenance and open space of trails.
It seems like it's for the last few years, it's basically asking for certain amounts for the trails, certain amounts for our wildlife ecologist contract, that continues or doesn't continue, and like the COSA conference,
Okay.
that we ask for budget funding for
Okay.
that.
So it's developed 2017 budget recommendations,
Correct.
right? So I think that's important to put in there. But that.
And say if we're doing 2017 budget recommendations, does it make sense to be doing it so early in the year? It does? Okay.
But I don't think you guys suggest a maintenance budget.
I know we had talked, was it last meeting or the meeting before that? I don't remember. About concern about the maintenance of some trails and whether or not we wanted to start recommending using some of the open space funds for maintenance,
I
since
see.
that hasn't been explored yet.
Okay.
That I believe is kind of a new thing. So if we kind of put that there as a placeholder that we can come back
Okay.
to, it might be a good idea.
Okay, so we want to reword A to be what?
Devote.
Expediting maintenance, or what?
It's almost what you're saying is the word extraordinary, outside the ordinary. Because the ordinary maintenance of open space and trails comes out of the general fund. Right? And what you're saying is expedited is a good word, enhanced, expedited, yeah.
And I think there's going to be more that needs to go into that, because we need to actually identify if there is additional maintenance that needs to occur, or do we really have trails that are becoming decrepit that need extra maintenance that they're not
Maybe
receiving?
the word potential expedited.
Potentially expedited maintenance. I'm fine with that wording.
And I would say of certain open space and trails. It's not like you're going to do the whole,
Right.
Of certain or certain critical? Of certain, we need to show a priority, is what I'm
Identify.
saying.
Would you say uncritical open space?
Of critically,
And are we really trying to maintain just open space in general, or? are we
No.
trying to maintain trails?
Of open space and
Trails
of
that are attached to open space that lead, that maybe.
maintenance of open space trails needing critical attention.
what you could say is OSAC-identified, potentially expedited of OSAC identified problem spots in current open space / trail offering. Identified projects.
Needing critical attention.
Yeah, needing critical attention. I think that makes sense. Potentially expedited maintenance of certain OSAC identified open space trails. Do we even need the word certain in there anymore?
No.
Yeah.
And I would put a hyphen between OSAC and identified.
Potentially expedited maintenance of OSAC identified open space trails needing critical attention. I'm good with that.
yep.
Did you mean just open space trails, or did you mean open space / trails? You meant trails, right?
We meant trails,
Okay.
on the open space, so I think that's appropriately worded.
do you want to just keep it as trails?
I say
and
we could just say
not
trails.
Have it open space, like maybe, like say an issue happens in open space that's not a trail that is, needs critical
Well, that'd be
attention.
pro stacks.
But it's still open space.
She's saying it's not related to trails. It's
Just curious.
Like what?
maybe a corridor or something that,
Has eroded
yeah, maybe,
uncontrollably and needs to be
that's a good example.
backfilled with weed, or not weeds, but.
Do you primarily have in mind the one in Coyote Ridge? Is that what comes to,
I
what
don't-
specifically comes to mind when you're thinking of this one?
Why don't we just say areas? And that kind of covers.
Right.
everything.
Good idea.
The first thing I thought of when I read this was the gravel trail that parallels McCaslin continues to wash out.
Oh, that's terrible.
And,
Mhm.
you know, with a few drainage ditches or some NDC where the water would run underneath it as opposed to taking it out every single time.
Yep.
I probably would put slash trails there. Potentially expedited maintenance of OSAC identified open space areas slash trails needing critical attention. I think that's a little bit, of course, I'd put a small m on maintenance. Just so it's perfect, guys.
you're right, you're
We've got a
right.
student in the audience. Detail matters.
So we all good with A now? Beautiful. So B, I think that's our placeholder to start moving on the 5-year trail plan, is that right? And our recommendations
That
for
would
it?
make sense considering we're trying to push for 2016 up here, and then after that, we
Yep.
would address.
Perfect. And then.
But it's not annual update that you're talking about there. It's develop 2017 budget recommendations for potentially expedited implementation, right? Of 5-year trails plan, potentially
Well-
expedite implementation.
I think that's a different topic. I think this is just, I mean, we still have to develop a 2017 5-year trail plan, right?
Yeah, but you don't need budget recommendations for that, right?
No, we don't.
So
No.
why is it under that category, number one?
I think it just kind of got grouped up into it, so we can split that out.
Develop,
Yeah,
and then
put that as,
the 2017 budget recommendations for under A, and then just have develop those annual updates.
but what should be there, I think that should be its own separate number, number 2, and move the others down, or add it as number 4 in your, but what you do need to add into the budget recommendations is your annual, borrow it from the top, how did you put it? Your annual public outreach and education program / events. So you're going to have to come up with a budget figure for that for 2017. Outreach and education program / events. And
Where is it? Where do we have
I'm looking
education
it? Oh, yeah, and education programs
/ events.
/ events. And then I think for C, we keep that where it is as well, but we
Right.
also need to make that its own separate line to determine what we're gonna do for 2016, right? When do we decide? I guess that might be third quarter well, for when we're actually gonna send somebody to like the COSA conference and whatnot.
Yeah, that's
I guess
right.
that's early fourth quarter, isn't it?
Did you see right there, it's on third
Third
quarter,
quarter.
Ken, number 1?
Oh, yep.
The only one.
I was only looking at the second quarter.
Well, I have one question.
Mhm.
If the group does the 5 years trails plan like we did this year, would that fall under this budget recommendation at all? Because we have maintenance, but we don't have
new trails, like if the group decided to do any new trails in the 5-year trails plan, would that fall under?
Well, the interesting thing is, you guys don't do the budget recommendations to implement the 5-year trails plan. That is the staff who does that, Matt and his crew, right? We have never put together, we put together the 5-year trails plan, right? And then ProStack puts theirs together and whatever, and then, but we don't mess around much with the money, right?
Correct, but it just makes me wonder if we're recommending the top 7, for example, of our 5-year trails plan. That was kind of my question. How does that work?
I think that's first quarter, that we're coming off the 2016 5 years trails plan, and we're coming in the first quarter. Where is that? That we're going to be doing an expedited. Do we have up there?
Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
So Sandy, question though. So we know that we're kind of already late on getting this expedited. I mean, we're going to need a budget amendment to do this.
No,
If
the
we're-
budget amendment comes at the end of the year.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
in practice, we would have rather had this figured out beforehand. So wouldn't it make sense to try to figure out what we want to do in 2017 early on, so we can just plain get that in the budget up front?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So even though it's in first quarter here, in reality, we might actually want it in second quarter going forward.
Well, you may put it under number 1A
Mm-hmm.
before you get to B, which changes gears. You might just
Say something like make recommendation for 2017 material creations.
yes, I'd use the same wording. Develop recommendations for, and maybe you just say expedited 2017 trail construction. So expedited 2017 trail construction.
Perfect.
I'd just start out with the word expedited, because it says develop 2017 budget recommendations for expedited 2017 trail construction. Does that catch what you were meaning? Okay,
I just I wasn't sure.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, there. And then A, B, C, D, there, Sean.
Cool. Hopefully, events happen that we can actually do that. I mean, I'm trying to think of, so this is kind of going off topic a little bit, but what Matt had said today is what we will need to do for the 2016 is, whether it's us or us and ProStack, we'll need to get together and figure out which trails we want the staff to put out for bid. We'll need to do that for 2017 as well, since we have to do the bid, and that is then followed by however much it will be, which is what we would put in the budget. Does that mean we need to? I'm trying to figure out the right process here.
Yeah, Matt's better on these things, but $250,000 already has been approved
Right.
for trail construction in 2016. And which trails that impacts is probably going to be determined by staff and board off of your current lists, right? So what I think is the easiest way in the first quarter to proceed is for you guys to arrive at a figure that says up to the number 500,000 has been bandied about, or whatever you guys say, 250,000 or whatever you feel like you want to potentially throw out there. And I had probably used language up to. And then, like I've said so often, to me, the best potential for getting them done in the order you wish to get them done is probably to meet with POSTAC and reach agreement and present to the board as a collective opinion. Because the board holds the final decision on that, right? So I think if you guys can, your two committees can agree, it would go a long way with the board. But I think just at the annual, so I would suggest at that joint annual meeting with the board that hopefully will take place in January, you are prepared to discuss a specific number in terms of amount of open space monies you would consider freeing up. It doesn't have to be there. I don't know that you have to add it there, but on whoever's making a list for what that agenda for the annual joint meeting is, I would pencil that in as a topic. One's mission and goals, right? Two would be a potential for up to X. Which you guys, it's already December. Your next meeting
It's like,
is the
next
second
meeting.
Wednesday of January. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
potentially when you, I don't think you're going to have any time left tonight, but you could, I think you need to discuss a figure,
Yeah.
unless somebody has a better idea.
It had been talked about throwing out an actual series of trails that made sense to say, okay, we want to figure out how much trails A, B, C, and D would cost, and then go from there. That way we can at least, because I think the trails tend to be somewhat systematic, that they kind of link together in certain ways. That way we could complete a certain system. So I think there was at least some discussion in previous meetings that we wanted to say, okay, we want to get this first system, which is
Well,
trails 1
that's
through 4
interesting,
done.
yeah. Well,
Um,
then, put that in your meeting with the board. The trail system you would like to see completed in 2016 and why, right?
Yep.
And then the money is secondary, and we're willing to then free up the money to do it.
Perfect. Okay. So I think we are good on number 1 in the second quarter. Number 2, host National Trails Day event on or near June 4th.
That's the new date. I popped it in.
Perfect. I think we're good there. Number 3, revisit previously identified open space acquisition priorities in conjunction with open space priorities for Boulder County. Is that referring to the Boulder County recommendations that we make each year, or is that?
What, yeah, what,
I think
It's-
that's what we were talking about, trying to understand the priorities of surrounding municipalities before.
And that
prioritizing
leaps back.
them.
I think it's the precursor to what you were talking about, Kim.
Okay. Revisit previously identified. Do we want to say for Boulder County and other municipalities? If we're going to look at if we're going to try to take into account what Lake Broomfield is doing, what Louisville is doing, that way we can make sure.
so why don't we just say Broomfield and Boulder and Broomfield counties? Those are the only 2 counties.
Yep. Logical. Okay. And annual update. And last annual updated 5-year trail plan.
Oh, there's a turn on the 3 axes. Just whatever.
Meh. All right. So everyone good with this? What we have in second quarter then? All right. Third quarter, have a presence at the Costa conference. I think that's good. I think that's all we have in third quarter.
So this must be fourth quarter then?
Yep.
Seems like we should have something else going on in third quarter. That's pretty late. Because that's
It's basically June.
July, summer months, right?
Yeah.
July,
I mean, there's.
Would the Boulder County recommendation come in there in third quarter? Do we have it somewhere else?
That's why I was wondering if it was actually, if that's what we were referring to up in the second quarter. Yeah. Because don't we normally have the
Finalize.
5-year trail plan and the Boulder County recommendations in the same quarter?
I could look up the old one if you would like me to.
Yeah, yeah. I would say, just on number 4 under second quarter, just put and XXX and have Allison fill that in with the Boulder County, whatever that thing's called, that
Yep.
we update every year.
Recommendation,
Boulder County.
acquisition, and,
Yeah, you know
Yeah,
what we mean.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you can.
Recommendation for BOCO. Perfect.
Third quarter is Chili Fest.
Yeah, I was going to say, we definitely have Chili Fest in there.
So 2 presents at 12 Chili Fest.
or 4th of July? When is 4th of July?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And Chili Fest.
4th of July and Chili Fest.
4 and Chili Fest events.
Yes.
Up in second quarter, do we want to put the same thing but for Arbor Day?
Yes. Participate in Arbor Day festivities.
I'm trying to think, are there any other events that we've typically had presence at besides those 3?
Well, those are
Arbor
going,
Day.
yeah, and then your Trails Day. So you've got.
And Trails Day, right? We have that in there.
April, June, July, September. That's pretty good.
Yep, that gives us 4 opportunities to make sure that we're getting public outreach and getting opinions. I'd say that's fairly sufficient.
Actually, 2 things that haven't been put anywhere. In the first quarter, I would also add monitor STC buffer issue. Buffer issue and comment as needed or necessary or something like that.
Okay.
And then Matt just said something's going to be coming your way it sounded to me like a Coal Creek Corridor master plan.
Yeah, Parks 1 and 2, and then potentially something else as well.
So possibly that's under ongoing.
I was going to say, I think we might have something for that in the
Okay.
ongoing area.
But let's not forget it, because that's a really big deal.
Modern entrepreneurs continue to pursue collaborative.
Right there, Coal Creek Corridor? No, no.
Mhm.
No, that is it, yeah.
Development of Superior Town Center.
Yep. I say we might want to reprioritize the way we have those
Right.
things, but. Okay, so are we good with third quarter as is for now, and we can revisit anything else we want to add back in?
Right.
All right, well, in that case, move down to fourth quarter. Number 1, review open space management plan to incorporate any new acquisitions. I'm fine with the way that's written. Number 2, begin discussions regarding we need to have that say 2017 work plan. Number 3, discuss potential wildlife enhancement / encouragement opportunities. That was a note for us to move that into the first quarter of this work plan, right? So do we want to move that, just that entire line up to the first quarter?
There was something too about speaking to other entities about what they're doing, and like some of it going into first quarter and some of it being remaining in that quarter, so I wasn't sure.
Those were several items that are all lumped into one.
Discuss
line.
potential wildlife enhancement. Yeah, it is.
It is. That's the pronghorn animal.
Yes, it is.
That's right. That's right.
So do we want to break this into 2 separate pieces? I mean, the Audubon Society, I know, is something we wanted to jump on and try to get moving, so that does make sense to have in the first quarter. But if we want to have discussed potential wildlife enhancements just kind of in general, our third quarter is looking awfully slim. Should we kind of move that first part down into the third quarter and have that second part about the Audubon stay in the first quarter?
I think you should also throw that Audubon thing on your joint ProStack meeting, because wasn't that in the context of
Yes.
of the reservoir? Ken, are you making an agenda there? Okay, good.
Yep.
Or various agendas, one with the town board, one with ProStack.
Keeping running lists of everything we need to talk about at certain times.
So do we want to repeat this, the discuss all the way to opportunities, and put that in the third quarter, so we have it in 2 places?
Or did you want to divide it?
I think we should divide it personally.
So would you say possible field presentation by BOCO Audubon Society?
Yeah, schedule possible field presentation in reference to Audubon Society.
And do you want to put it up higher with your cluster of ProStack stuff?
So now let's move that entire first part, everything before the hyphen, down to the third quarter, and just start that current line 8 with schedule. Does that sound good?
Right.
Other way around.
Leave that.
Yeah, leave that piece up there. Move the first part down.
I need Sean at my house.
And then let's just drop it in a new line on the third quarter.
This can take me half the day sometimes, just rejiggering.
Beautiful. Discuss potential wildlife enhancement / encouragement opportunities. I think that might be good as is. Do we need to add anything to that?
Sounds good to me.
Beautiful.
Still a lot in
Yeah, there is. I'm a little concerned about how top-heavy we are. I mean, the thing is, a lot of that will kind of take care of itself. I mean, leadership election, that's quick and it'll happen. The annual schedule, the joint meeting, that's just going to kind of happen as well. We're going to review number 3 at the second one. I mean, there's going to have to be some type of special.
For each meeting.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be busy, but I mean, does anyone see anything in that first quarter that we really can move down or would want to move down? I think a lot of that needs to be there.
Again, I mean, monitor, that's pretty low.
I mean, that's just something that needs to be there because that's what's kind of being taken care of right now.
Some of them are just low-hanging fruit.
Maybe number 7 is something we could drop down. Does that need to be up there if we think first quarter is too hectic?
I think the reason for having it in the first quarter is then you implement
Throughout the year. Yeah, you're right.
Summer
Because a lot of those
You're
volunteer
right.
weeks are in the
Yeah.
second quarter.
I think if anything, the market.
Another thing is, what other committees do is if now that you guys are up to 9 members, to have a couple of your members actually take on some of these things. You know, so people who are interested in this volunteer initiative for trail maintenance. And by the way, that's how I would say develop a volunteer initiative for trail maintenance, because initiative and program are redundant there.
What number are we at?
Right there, the one that's highlighted. Investigate and potentially develop a volunteer initiative for trail maintenance, and then get rid of the initiative at the end. So you can, you can have a couple of you doing National Trails Day, a couple of you doing the Volunteer Trail Initiative.
I think that makes sense.
And, a couple of you doing, for lack of anything else, web-based issues, that kind of thing, or however you divvy up work.
You might want to actually, what Trustee Pennington is talking about, pop that right into number 1. Commit to member responsibility and attendance.
Leadership
at related-
election, commit to member attendance, delegate or decide.
Attendance / delegated responsibility. Oh, yeah. Attends at meetings.
Kind of fits in there a little bit.
I would probably
Yeah.
put it after whole leadership
Yeah.
election, commit to annual work distribution.
Yeah.
Comma.
We could say.
Decide member attendance at related meetings and events. Just
I mean, that somewhat is also included in work distribution. We could say committing to work distribution, and whether in parentheses or something like to include attendance at related meetings.
or you really, all you need to say is hold leadership election, comma, commit to annual work distribution among committee members,
Yep,
and that's it.
that sounds good.
See, you benefit from having a copy editor.
Yeah.
You really benefit from having an Excel guy.
All
There
right.
you go.
Okay. So I think we're good, or does anybody still want to drop something down out of first quarter?
For leadership election, schedule annual joint meeting, board review of new committee mission and goals. During joint meeting.
Prostac has to happen.
Prostac, schedule possible field
That seems to me like something that could be moved down. Sean, that was your idea. How do you feel about when that should occur?
Here's a better idea. How about we just make those sub-items like we have in the second quarter of 4? Because
Okay.
didn't we just move those up there simply because it was something we'd want to talk to ProStack about?
Right. So just make that A?
Yeah. The one underneath it.
And C would be work jointly on 5-year trails plan.
Yeah.
Joint work on 5-year trails plan.
Do we have that up there? Plan and schedule. Yeah, I think we need to write in a new C. I'm not sure we have it in there.
It was.
We have it
26,
as
line
number
26.
4, yeah. There.
Yeah. Yeah, just copy it, right like it is.
And instead of annual update, we can write discussion related to, or discuss 5-year trails plan.
Discuss annual update. Yep, that's
Yep.
it.
Perfect. We still want it down in the second quarter though, don't we? Because that's when we actually have to make our recommendation, or do we just want that to be?
Well, you're doing the collaboration plan. Oh, yeah, keep it, yeah, definitely keep the actual item down where it needed to be, which was second quarter.
Perfect.
How do we want to start that sentence?
That, right there.
Yeah.
Annual update.
Yeah, I think that was how we had it. Beautiful. Oh. I think third quarter is still a little bit sparse, but we can use that to catch up on what we haven't yet finished from 1 and 2. Plus, there's all that ongoing
Yeah.
work.
Well, okay, so we got through third quarter, what about 4?
So fourth quarter review open space management plan to incorporate any new acquisitions. Does that relate? Does that relate to the budget at all?
Really, the open space, have you guys even seen the open space management plan? Yeah, that is really staff handled. That does not mean that you shouldn't or couldn't be more, aware of how our open space is managed.
So it's a good placeholder there. I think
Yeah.
that makes sense. Begin discussions regarding 2017 work plan. Beautiful. All right, so everybody good with fourth quarter then? Ongoing. Number 1, continue to work with town board and staff to acquire level 3 property. Always up at the top. Number 2, monitor Hodgson Harris Reservoir regeneration.
I think we need to.
What do we
It's
want
not
to?
regeneration, it's now.
It actually could be. I mean, I think that's sort of a good word. You mean how it's coming back?
Wouldn't that be rehabilitation then, instead of regeneration?
Yeah.
Regeneration to me is what they already did with rebuilding
Okay.
the dam.
I like that word, rehabilitation.
Yep.
See if it goes through spell check.
Probably not like that.
That was me behind that.
In fourth quarter, we may want to add, evaluate outdoor education programming, like
Yeah.
we're doing
Yeah.
tonight, just to,
Yeah.
as a placeholder to decide, do we want to try some new stuff out? Do we want to, how are our numbers and things like that?
Evaluate 2016 outdoor education program.
17.
2016, and then make recommendations
Oh.
for
Yeah.
2017.
Well, I
Or
think, I don't even,
something.
I don't think you need anything more because begin discussions regarding
Right.
the 2017 work plan will. I would
Yes.
probably flip those, make 2, 3, and 3, 2.
Besides evaluate, do we want to say evaluate, educate, evaluate means like do a retrospective evaluate, or what are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're looking at our participant numbers and how the events went, and then we're talking about
Can I say
if we should.
retrospective of instead of, I don't know, evaluate to me means something a little different. Retrospective.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
All right, whatever.
If the word fits.
All right, so back down to ongoing. I think we're good with number 2. Number 3, continue to pursue regional collaboration with other open space committees.
Other regional open space committees
Regional collaboration.
continue to pursue
Collaboration with other regional. Yep.
Well, no, it's fine.
With other open-
Yeah, I didn't see it there. Regional's fine there. Continue to pursue regional collaboration. Yeah.
That's the
But it only
first.
does
One too many clicks.
Yeah.
All right. Number 4, continue to monitor the status and provide input on the Coal Creek corridor during the development of the Superior Town Center.
I would
Um,
drop the whole last part of that off and assume that's going to be a long-term mission of yours, whatever affects the Coal Creek corridor.
Okay.
Because, for example, on the Rogers property, which is not town center,
Right.
you're going to want to weigh in.
And I think optimally we probably want to move that up to number 2 rather than number 4. I think it probably, in our order of importance, takes precedence over monitoring Hodgson Harrison. All right. Number 5, next steps for Shan Shan open space. I imagine we may want to move that up as well to number 3.
I think I'm running out of batteries on this one. So, we're doing this.
Do you want a verb there? Do you want to say develop next space, next steps for Shan Shan open space?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. The next one is naming trails and open space. Number 7, evaluate what we want on our website, marketing for our group.
I would say evaluate OSAC website, comma, OSAC website, comma, marketing. And that's all. Evaluate OSAC website, comma, marketing. Hi, Daryl.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Does anybody have any further questions or comments about the work plan as it stands?
Do we want to move on going to the very top? Or do we want to leave it up? For instance,
I think my preference would be leave it at the bottom. All right. So I think we'll kind of leave this here as it is right now. I think my preference as far as the next steps with this would be to send it out to the committee right before our next meeting, have everybody come to the meeting having already reviewed this and either prepared to ask questions or make comments, and if they don't have any, just move into voting so we don't have to go through this all over again. So we can send that out in an email and say, hey, come ready to move forward.
Capital P there, Sean, on plan.
Beautiful. All right. Moving on. The 2016 Outdoor Education Program.
I'm saving now, okay.
Yeah, save it. Save it.
Yeah.
Save it a lot.
Education programs.
Yep.
Oh. Okay, so where we last left off, we were discussing participant numbers and what we were thinking about recommending to Ashley to maybe discontinue or add. And one of the things was night hikes. There was an interest for maybe some night hikes. And, you know, looking at these numbers and deciding where the participants seemed lower, if we wanted to ask Ashley to maybe come up with something or to recommend the night hikes, or maybe even changing the Coyote presentation to a weekend night, which there was some discussion about it being, you know, on a Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't convenient, and that's perhaps why the numbers were down. Or, you know, if we wanted to discontinue that program for this year and maybe alternating every 2 or 3 years, you know.
When do the pups get born? Is that?
In the spring?
So would that be an Arbor Day, that you could actually have that at Arbor Day?
Correct.
That might be a good thing. Just
So just a note to
conduct it at Arbor
incorporate.
Day.
And basically, I'm just going to put notes on what
Mhm.
everybody thinks. And we don't have to make a recommendation or anything. It's just basically a discussion that I have with Ashley when I'm renewing her contract. And
I think the other thing that kind of jumps out as low participation is that National Trails Day hike. I haven't actually participated and gone with her on that hike.
The
Don't really.
problem with that is you take the crowd away from your events. So
Isn't-
anything that does that is,
Isn't it also done after Hawk Quest and all that, or kind of during the heat of the day when people are starting to peter out as is? I mean, I think it might not be worth it to continue with that.
or you could think of totally rejiggering your National Trails Day. It's called National Trails Day.
Well, and we had talked about
So it could be
that.
totally a trails-related event where you're on the trail.
And we had talked about that last time, I think, at the end of our last National Trails Day when we talked about lessons learned. It had been brought up to maybe do more of our animal-related type presentations because Hawk Quest is clearly successful. We had talked about getting some type of equestrian presentation in there, seeing as how we share the trails with the horse community.
And she does have a booth there, so this was
Yep.
kind of like her second thing. She
Yeah.
had the booth, and then she would leave the booth.
I think if we could talk to her to propose other ideas for her kind of like second part, that'd be good.
Do any of these have snake aspects in them? Did we discuss some kind of event with snakes?
We discussed the same organization that Louisville is using, so
Yeah.
I think it would be separate unless we wanted Ashley, or the group wanted Ashley to combine.
I think adding this on here, another event. I want to clear out the snakes.
Yeah, so this.
Right, but not with her or in
Yeah.
conjunction with her.
So this, just to make sure we're all on the same page, this is only in reference to what we get from Ashley with her contract, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And there's also a little extra one that's in the contract that we can use if something comes up. So not only does she do this programming, but she also does a lot of the wildlife information. If someone, a resident has an issue or a question about wildlife in the neighborhood, we direct them to her, or her to them, and let them communicate regarding, questions or issues. So that's the other half of this contract.
But going back to the snake thing, wouldn't that be a good thing at National Trails Day? I mean, because you're starting the summer
Yeah.
hiking season.
Yes, that could be another. I mean, we could reach out to him because I think we had kind of talked about the fact that even though Rocky Mountain Rescue Group provide a lot of really great information, we're starting to see a little bit lower interest in what they were providing to us.
Yeah, I think snakes would be, would draw a crowd.
Yeah, agreed. Snakes is definitely something we can incorporate into National Trails Day next year.
Were we also going to do something about hibernation, like a winter presentation? Because we seem to be lacking in the winter timeframe. Can you expand the date column as well? Because I can't see the dates all the way. But as I recall, we were lacking for things going on in the winter season. We have a big gap between September and February. And I thought we had discussed something on hibernation or something that's more animal winter activity type things.
Well, certainly deer,
Mhm.
Bears.
Pronghorn
Also
antelope,
have Animal tracks.
animal
Like
tracks.
last
Oh,
year,
tracking.
Well,
That'd be
this,
great.
the winter wildlife hike, I attended that, and that's exactly what she did. Like, you could tell it's a coyote versus a dog because coyotes track in a straight line, and there's a lot of information about that.
Okay. So, I mean, we have a lot of comments up here. Does anybody else have any comments that they'd like to add that Allison can bring up when she meets with Ashley?
So Allison, you sort of run this from a staff perspective. What would you drop, if anything?
I would probably drop the coyote presentation. There was only 3 people here. I do like the aspect that it's for adults because a lot of it is for younger children, but adults have been attending a lot of the hikes and walks, which is kind of an interesting dynamic, not only people with children, but also adults without children. And it's interesting seeing the dynamic between the 2 groups, and it kind of gets residents together that may not typically get together. But the coyote presentation, it's like a football night, it's a Thursday night.
I think you also hit the nail on the head earlier, saying that maybe this is something we do alternating years. I mean, we've had a lot of coyote presentations over the past 3 years now.
And
maybe?
it's a great program.
Yeah.
But maybe when the activity picks
Just do it on
up.
Arbor Day, have it once a year.
Yeah.
Do it
Well, she
on
always
Arbor Day.
brings her coyote stuff to Arbor Day, so she has her animals. The other thing is maybe we keep it on the back burner, and when coyote activity picks up and we need it, we use that for our extra program in the contract.
Yep.
Strictly speaking from what I see and hear in social media and friends and stuff, 2 things that everybody wants to talk about are snakes and spiders.
Yeah, the spiders are neat.
The spiders are very hot topic of conversation.
They are.
Does-
Well, you could make it snakes and spiders. You could do that
Well,
together.
I'm not sure I think that'd be different presentation groups because I don't think the snake
Or bats
person.
and spiders.
Huh?
Bats and spiders.
Oh, yeah, what happened to the bats idea?
It's up there.
It's in here.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Are we feeling pretty good with this list?
Yep.
I'm feeling good.
Awesome. It's probably my favorite. Ashley is great.
All right, well, any last questions before we move on? All right. Final agenda topic, the Coal Creek Crossing Trail. Allison, do you want to give a brief description of what this is, and then we'll open it up to public comment before we dig into our discussion?
Sure. So this is an item that's come up recently, and so this is the area for Coal Creek Crossing, which is across from Founders Park, behind that development. This is the one of the old documents here, and
This is not what it looks like.
so this is the first document that showed the trail and what the development was going to look like. It doesn't any longer look like this. So just so you can see, this is a trail along here is the trail. So this is one of the first documents. Yeah, it's so. Do you know where Founders Park is? So across from Founders Park,
Founders
there's
Park
that
is at the
new
top of the
development
screen.
is up here,
Yeah.
and then so the development initially had more buildings than it has now, and so initially this trail is shown.
And that's the Coal Creek Crossing related trail. That's not the county.
It's not Meadowlark, which probably wasn't there in 2008.
Right, and I think that there may have been some question or confusion if this trail was already there or not there. So when you look at the new plan, you can see that a lot of the dwellings have been reduced. And then there's still this trail here. And this trail along here going this way is not the one in question. It's the trail from here across open space and up into original town.
And where's the county trail on that? It's south of there, right?
Yes.
Further below, though we
Yeah.
can't see it.
So what's the question on this trail? I'm not familiar with why it's in question.
Can
Well-
you make that a little bigger too? So it's still kind of hard to see what it's.
Well, I'll tell you why it's in question. Or Allison, were you prepared to do that?
You feel free.
What's in question, ProStack did not feel that it had ever been given the opportunity to comment on this trail. And I think OSAC would say the same. So that's question number one. And then question number two is, do we really want one, is the trail necessary? And I think Daryl's prepared to come up and tell you what it crosses. And so the concern is really, do we want foot traffic over some of this delicate ground that it would cross? Is it necessary when right below this you have the county trail anyway? So it's duplicative.
And is this still the way it's being proposed? This
Yes.
is the most, okay.
And frankly, from a town board perspective, I only was elected after this had already gotten preliminary development approvals, so my ability to do anything on it was very constrained to the few items that were not approved, that were open when the final development plan came in. But as a town trustee, I don't remember this east-west trail at all. I remember the trail connection to the south and to the west over there, but not this. So I think the residents who were concerned about it had a good reason to bring it up. And I was pleasantly pleased to hear Matt say that since the concern has emerged, which is just over the past couple months, he's had the discussion with Remington Homes, and they are very amenable to doing what the town wants with this trail. So Daryl will give you more of the background.
I think this would
I
be,
have one more question, if you don't mind. We see that it tails off over to the southwest here. Does that just dead end?
No,
Have they cleared their property,
it
or-
connects. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you
Perfect.
just introduce yourself, Daryl? And Daryl's also a member of ProStack.
Daryl McCool. I live in Original Town, and I was on ProStack when this was part of the discussion, but I actually wasn't at the meeting. And we only ever discussed the south trail, not this east-west trail, because everybody assumed it was the county trail. And this visual aid, if I can plug it in, will show you. Is there a way to?
Is it?
Thanks.
Would you like a laser pointer?
I might need one. Yeah, and just to give you a little history, I've been here for almost 20 years, and I was one of the original people that got the funding for OSAC put on the ballot. In fact, the original logo, open space logo, I designed to put on our posters, to the campaign posters that we had to get the tax initiative passed. So I have a very, very deep-rooted history in not only Superior, but in the open space and connections here. So I was just going to show you one. Okay, here's the visual aid that'll help. So this is the trail that we were just looking at, and that would be the trailhead and where it would come out. This is the existing single tree trailhead, and this is the single tree Mayhopper Trail. And this would be the connection at some point down onto the county trail here. So what's in question is, do we need this trail, which is now our open space? When it was originally proposed, it was Remington property, but this is our land. Do we need a trail that parallels, essentially, has two major trailheads within, less than a mile of each other, dumping into, this trail actually goes, I walked it today, there's two homes right here within 20 feet of the trail that's being proposed. There's the Hake, historic Hake property out here. The 100-year floodplain runs right in through here. So when I saw that trail, and what we had thought years ago was that it was this, that was sort of our thinking, because we didn't see the whole overview. Do we really need that trail? It will be very, very busy. The single tree trail is already very busy. Do we need another one? And that, again, that is our open space. Smith Environmental Study, which you guys may or may not be familiar with, was done in 2003, talks about that piece of property being a wildlife corridor and all of the wildlife that's in there. I think our own open space management plan talks about that being just passive use as well. So what the other things I wanted to show you are, these are baby owls, and they were nesting out there on the single tree trail. These are them as immature little guys, and that's the mom sitting in the tree.
I've seen her before.
Yeah. And then this is right off the single tree trail down near Depot and the trailhead area. And that's a mama bear and her two cubs.
Oh, what's that?
it was taken this summer.
Cool.
And the interesting thing that you'll notice, the mom has one of her paws missing.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. So anyway, I have real concerns about putting another trail through there, disrupting all this amazing wildlife that we have out there. We know that when bears and humans mix, bears lose. And we put a trail that goes right by homes, near trash cans, near compost, near all of that stuff. They already do come down through town. They haven't come through, they haven't been following, but they do follow this trail because you can see scat out there all the time. They don't follow that corridor as much. But do we want them potentially heading in here and having problems with humans? So anyway, those are my concerns as a person. It is a backyard issue for me, absolutely, but it's also an environmental issue for me. So I think it's really important that we have a discussion about this trail and whether it's really necessary. So thanks.
I mean, my thought process is I see, I mean, we've got the two access points, the one on the left, which is on the west side, and then the one in question with the green circle on the east. I mean, it seems that that one is more designed for the benefit of Old Town. Have you talked to any of your neighbors or heard any other comments from your neighbors about whether they want an additional access point? Or, I mean, I'm trying to figure out where the logic was in trying to have the two access points, and that's the only thing that jumps out at me for why it was there to begin with.
Well, I do know the neighbor right here did come to the board meeting a couple weeks ago and say he does not want the trail there. There are throughout the Remington development coming out of Charles Street and from right here, there's trail access from their community right there and right there.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, everyone in Original Town, I mean, for 11 years, we just go up and around, you know. I don't know that we need, I mean, you're talking
Quarter mile, maybe.
yeah,
Where's the 3rd Street access to Singletree?
right here.
Yeah,
red
there you-
circle.
Yeah,
This is
okay.
existing. And then the other thing you guys have talked about is the Shan Shan Trailhead,
Mhm.
Yeah.
which I
Yep.
think is a great idea. You know, it will take some pressure off maybe the Colton Trailhead down here, but then you've got 3 major regional trailheads in a very close proximity. The other thing that hasn't been considered is parking down here. Would there be parking? Should there be parking? If you don't have parking, what happens?
That is the resident with the green circle, very concerned because the way his property is situated, I suspect he's going to have parking on his property. And then, of course, all those residential streets there. You know, these are all, it's all just very valid considerations, and you can still affect it, you know. It hasn't started to be built.
Yeah, which is important. And I don't know what the idea is. So the 100-year floodplain, that's this line, if we go back to Allison's drawing, that's that right there. I mean, what considerations do we need to take into for that trail as well? We know what happens when the trails get hit.
Maybe sometime we also can go out and, as a committee, and look at the Hake Ditch, because while it's been piped underground as part of the Remington Development Agreement, apparently still it's out there as a ditch. And, you know, it is a historic property for the town, and the question is, should that potentially be negatively affected for another trail? So I haven't been out there to see it myself, but we might want to go out there.
There doesn't seem to be a lot of evidence or need for that, other than it's a check mark for that development.
Right.
There's a lot of trail entrances. I mean, even on West Coal Creek Drive, you don't even have circle there. People could just walk down that road to get to the.
People do park there.
Yeah, there's parking there all the
and-
time.
And use that trail there, so you could actually add a 3rd green circle at that intersection.
Right.
There's plenty of access. There's no need for another trail, just for ease of convenience for that neighborhood. It's ridiculous, in my opinion.
question, I mean, obviously there's no occupants, but the people that live on Charles Street, they want a busy regional trail coming through their backyard.
I would tell you most of my neighbors would say no, but I can't speak for them.
Sure.
But,
But we did have one vocal, articulate resident at the
Yeah.
last board meeting who really
he
does
was the
not
one that
agree.
brought up the Smith environmental study, and I think it was a really valid point.
Well,
that-
And we even know, just based off our own talks about other trails, the one that was going to go behind Sagamore, there was direct concern about trails going directly behind homes, and it's going to hit that entire New Wilmington block that abuts. I mean, I'm in agreement. I don't see a direct need to have that there.
I see little benefit from adding a redundant trail and access point. I almost think it might cause confusion for people that are traveling north on the Mayhoff or Single Tree, that they now have a fork.
Right, what do we?
Yeah.
And I will tell you, it's very confusing out there. If you don't have a map or you don't know the area, I'm always running and telling people where to go and how to get places.
So Sandy, what are next steps for this? Is there a recommendation we should put forward?
You can, you
to the
can't
board?
vote tonight because you don't have a majority, so you're going to
Right.
have to bring this back up, but at your next meeting, you could vote to suggest to the board that this not be built. So that's how easy it can be done. But this is also the reason why you need, Daryl, you can take this back to ProStack. This pointed out that there are trails out there that are not on either committee's master trails plan info. And so all privately funded trails, this is not a private trail, it's just Remington was on tap to pay for its development. But all of that, Calmonte's trails that they've agreed to build, et cetera, all these need to be on a master plan so you know how can you make a wise decision other way about linkages, you know?
I wasn't familiar enough with the topic when Matt was talking, but I'm wondering if, rather than doing this, the developer might come up with different alternatives. I mean, this was clearly an idea to help benefit the community, and of course, I somewhat see why they would be okay with dropping it, because it was going to come out of their pocket anyway. So if there's no one pushing it, they get to save some money. I mean, is there any way we could get them to propose some alternatives?
Well, I wouldn't leave it in their hands. I would propose an alternative. Have your committees, ProStack and OSAC, agree? Is that linked to the west? Is it connected to the county trail to Singletree Mayhofer?
Right
Does it
here.
go all the way?
This?
One presumes it does.
Well, that is the plan, but this is Boulder County land.
Oh,
over
I
here.
see.
So they have to approve it, and you are talking about going over ditches. There's a lot of water
Mhm.
right there.
Mhm.
So they have to figure out the best route to get through there without,
So where is it intended to lead as it goes west, if it hits up against
just
that?
somewhere down.
Just
there.
connecting to Myhofer.
I mean, you can almost see, and I think that's the creek right there.
Right, okay.
So I think that it would probably go on this side of it. I don't really know. I mean, the frogs out there are amazing. I mean,
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
so
but-
loud out there.
But
It's
I
great.
think it is interesting to say, well, you're not going to have to spend X amount of money on that. And we would suggest that instead, some of those funds or all of those funds be put in another direction. Now, understand that because this did receive final approval, they could insist on building this. So it's got to be amicable, though, suggestions, et cetera. We want to have a collaboration here. We don't want them digging their heels in
Yep.
the sand, because they could choose to go ahead with this, but it sounds like they're amenable to
I prefer
not.
to see them plant trees in all those backyards to hide those houses.
Yeah.
well, what about like a perch or something? I mean, obviously we have nesting owls. The hawks are out there all the time, and the bald eagle, and a golden eagle I've seen out there as well. Maybe there's
That's an idea.
Yeah.
something like that they could.
Some sort of way to access a nice perch.
And that would benefit them as well, because
Right.
you're adding more wildlife viewing possibilities to their development.
And more ways to naturally get rid of voles and mice.
And it also
Yep.
sets the tone for, both committees have talked ad nauseum about Hodgson Harris and what might be able to be done. This could really be a pilot for,
I mean, it's a huge rapid
Viewing.
area. It's
Yeah.
hard to go out there and not see one, so.
Daryl, would it be possible for us to get a copy of that exact exhibit? Because I know we just have so many missing people this time. It'd be great to be able to show them when we talk about it at our next
Yeah,
meeting.
I put it in PowerPoint so you can see it. And the bear thing is so amazing.
Is it this here?
Yeah.
Well, I think we all kind of were in agreement. Does anyone else have any comments or questions about that? Cool. Daryl, thanks. Yeah, thanks for bringing this to us. Appreciate it. That finishes up our agenda. Does anyone else have any closing comments or questions before we adjourn?
Before you leave, I wanted to let you know, this is all these are residents, right? These are all residents who apply.
Where is it? I'm like looking for it.
On this
Like my
committee, so
brain.
it's residents giving their time. I'm at least elected,
Oh.
but they're selected by the town board. So young man, make sure you know how to use Excel. Right. And what grade are you in school? Oh, okay, because we have the youth advisory group. We started the youth advisory group.
I think we can go ahead and adjourn.
I don't know.
All right.
20 high
We're adjourned.
schoolers or maybe that sort of to advise the board on youth-related issues, but you're graduating? Well, you could do it for your last semester if you're interested. Okay, good. Yeah. And they meet in here once a month and they provide a lot of good help, especially as a potential community center. So for youth functionality, youth gathering spaces and all that kind of stuff. So there you go.
Are you sure it's not
Are you
there?
Andrew, whatever his name's class, government class, who's your teacher? Yeah, I have 3 sons who are grads. and we have to do the same program, way back in 2000, whatever. Yeah, it's a good class. Yeah, and yeah, thanks for coming. It's fun.
It's not.
Thank-
You know what? I put it in. I must not have published it. There's so many steps to the new.
Financial.
I knew I put it.
Other technical financial market analysis in the commodity market. Yeah, I don't do it anymore, but I did it. It's part of my DNA. I did it for 20 years. You name the commodity market, I did trading analysis.
Well, that's the area I work in, is I work for a natural gas processing company in downtown Denver. We trade natural gas liquids predominantly.
On the spot markets
Yeah,
and stuff?
exactly.
Yeah.
We have a lot of long-term contracts and things like that.
Do you hedge it at all in
They
futures
do
markets?
hedge, but they're hedging more against the spread on oil versus, price of propane.
Used to be quite a spread expert.
Oh,
I
really?
did, and I looked at grain spreads and the stock index spreads. And I did do some work in energies back when Enron was a big player, and.
A small software company that I worked for back in Oklahoma, that I was kind of a career working around this piece of software because back in the 90s when I wrote it, it blew up. It started with Texaco and Chevron and ConocoPhillips and BP, Enron at the time. And so we were very nervous in the late 90s when Enron imploded that our software was going to be implicated in helping them round-trip trades because it was in charge of trading, scheduling, and accounting.
Yeah.
And so
Well, I haven't done it for the pretty much last decade, but I was spreads and seasonality analysis, I started out wanting the real-time commodity markets. I worked for Commodity News Services, which is, I don't know whoever acquired them, but it was a Knight Ridder thing that was real-time computer analysis. you know, anything, you know, terrorist attack, you know, fix commodity markets, et cetera. But all the supply and demand reports and all that kind of stuff, any fundamental or increasingly technical issue, because technical trading became a major issue when I was there. So then I went out on my own and I actually did Pennington reports, and my clients, Chicago Board of Trade, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, et cetera, the whole point is don't just put out a brochure on the S&P 500 futures contract, put out quarterly at least pieces on what upcoming, what has historically happened in this time period to outrights and spreads. And where are those spreads now? Are they high or low versus historical, you know, the basis type stuff? And where might interested investor or hedger be looking for opportunity or risk?
Recycling?
Yeah, one of my
Over in
clients that I work
the
with.
little spot. Thanks for looking at that, Sean. I always need more
Getting
eyes than what I
least
have.
crude oil from the Four Corners area, but then they're turning that into refined products.
Seriously.
And when I was working for them 3 years ago,
Hi, guys.
that guy's, the crack spread between the oil and gas was $40 a barrel. And I talked to them last week and they were like, it's more in the 14 range.
Oh, yeah, this is exactly what I, yeah.
But that's, I asked that question because when I was younger, I wrote a book around, how would it be?
I was actually gonna fix it before we left, and I figured everyone was rushing off.
I kept looking at it, I'm like, holy crap, Matt did take a long time. I was wrong.
Let's see, if I do simple, it will automatically go back an hour, right? So it won't let me do anything else. It just has 4 buttons.
Okay.
I don't know if this is one of those,
We can just leave it, it'll fix.
hopefully, if I did this right.
I know, I was like, am I crazy? I
Wait a
keep
minute.
looking at my
Look at that,
phone.
look at that now, it says, that's
10.
wrong. So, why'd it go that direction?
Well, we'll just leave it up there and I'll let Jody know in the morning.
Okay, all right.
It was, oh, there it goes. It was funny because I was looking at it and I'm like, is my phone wrong?
Yeah, I looked at it, I was like, wow, our meeting went fast tonight. It's like, we're already an hour